Keith, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it, man.
Yeah, good to be here.
I got a question for you. We've got one of the things that we all were excited about, in Texas' title defense was actually something that had nothing to do with the title defense last year, and that was Wyatt Langford and him coming up to the majors, and it just looked like every single level from college up through every level of the minor leagues, small sample size given, that he just was knocking it out of the park, figuratively and literally. But he came up here, he struggled a lot in this first month. Then he just recently hit the IL. What are your thoughts on Langford's struggles? Is this within the realm of expectation for you, or is there anything long-term concern about what you think you've seen out of Langford at the major league level this first month?
No, you look at a lot of top prospects, hitting prospects specifically, have struggled with the transition to the majors. Jackson Holliday is probably the most prominent example. And, it comes down to the difference in the caliber of pitching that hitters face, even in AAA, to what they face in the majors is as big as it's ever been. I've been in this business for 22 years, and I think especially post-pandemic, when Major League Baseball cut, 40 teams from the minors, that has really increased the gap. The caliber of pitching is just much worse even in AAA than it is in the majors. So a lot of hitters who are quite talented can perform like Wyatt Langford did, like Jackson Holliday did, all the way up through AAA. And you realize they're not learning anything at AAA, and they come up to the majors, and a lot of them struggle right out of the gate. And I don't think this is it doesn't dim my optimism for either of those guys that I mentioned or several other top prospects who struggled on their first go-round in the majors. But I do think we need to change the way our expectations for these guys when they first come up. I still think Wyatt Langford's going to be a star. I still think Jackson Holliday's going to be a star. Jackson Churio with the Brewers, another example. It's just going to take time. And I think a lot of these guys might struggle in their first year or first half year in the majors before they get to the level that we expect of them.
Does that just make it, like you say, hey, this is a normal expectation given the jump in terms of pitching from AAA to the majors? Does that make it all the more impressive that Evan Carter came up and did what he did at the end of last year and then through the postseason? Obviously struggled a little bit early on, but what do you see when you see a guy like Evan Carter and his approach, a guy who was relatively unknown when the Rangers took him, and the reason why he had success with that jump?
Well, he did have more time in the minors, obviously, and I should point out Evan Carter's struggling also this year.
Right now, yeah.
And league's gotten to see him a little bit more. Carter had more time in the minors than those two guys we just mentioned. Carter always had an incredibly patient, disciplined approach, which I do think helped him, especially in the playoffs last year, where he was able to get himself into a lot of very favorable counts. I also give the Rangers credit. They were careful with how they used him. They recognized Carter had some platoon issues, much, much better against right-handed pitching, and they primarily used him that way, which, that's not a way you develop a guy in the long term, but certainly in the short term, it can allow him to help your club quite a bit more, and it can also help build a guy's confidence. Hey, we're going to put you in situations where you're likely to succeed right out of the gate, and then we will introduce you to more situations where you might struggle. So you're just kind of easing guys in, which a lot of teams just don't do that, right? You call a guy up and he's playing every day, and sometimes that's the right thing to do, but I do think in Carter's case, I think the Rangers recognized his strengths and weaknesses and deployed him appropriately.
Keith Law joining us here, 105 through the Fan. So, yeah, because one of the things we noticed with Wyatt is, he's, and I don't know if this is a problem for a lot of guys who just come up the league, getting called out on third strikes a lot, looking, and it looked like he's guessing a lot, maybe looking away, they're busting him inside, whatever it may be, just not knowing the league yet. I don't know. But with what you said about the league and the way the minor league systems are so different now, would it even be beneficial to him to send him back down after he's healthy?
I don't think so, because I'm, looking at what he was doing, right? Yeah, yes, it does seem like he was getting called out on some third strikes, but overall, he's not striking out excessively. He's making plenty of hard contact. One of the things that a lot of these hitters have a hard time with coming up, especially from AAA. In AAA, they use the automated ball strike system, and in the majors, they don't. And I'm noticing a lot of these hitters who come up are really struggling with pitches that are just at the edge of the strike zone, which in AAA you can always challenge, and that'll be called, if it's outside the zone, it'll be called a ball. And in the majors, a lot of those pitches are called strikes. You see higher walk rates in AAA because of the use of that system. And when it comes to the majors, that's going to change the way that a lot of hitters and pitchers have to approach at bat. So I don't see anything in Langford's performance or in his underlying data that says to me, he's got to go back down. Frankly, I think if you send him back down, he's just going to mash. He's not going to learn anything. I'd rather he come up, and even if he does struggle another month or two, let him come up and keep making adjustments. But the fact that he, like I say, put the ball in play at a pretty good rate and there was plenty of hard contact, he's going to be fine.
Jack Leiter, another prospect that we've seen a couple of games of his up here. What did you see from him coming out of college, and then how is he different, if at all, now reaching the major league level?
Yeah, well, the kind of hard to believe thing is, this was a guy who was command, right? He was a strike thrower. He seemed to really locate. Hitters did not get to his fastball. He could locate it in the upper part of the zone and put it right by guys. But there was an argument he probably didn't have a true wipeout pitch, but he was more of a complete pitcher, great feel, great command, 4-pitch mix. And he's not been that guy in pro ball really at any point. When he went right out to AA the first year, he already struggled with strikes, and that has kind of been the case ever since. And what's happened in the majors, he's walked a few more guys than you'd like, but he's just giving up a lot of hard contact. And I think they're going to have to figure out something. Maybe it's getting him away from the four-seamer entirely, because that pitch really, just pro hitters at all levels have shown that they can hit that pretty hard. And we've seen a lot of guys derailed. Casey Kelly's one of the better examples of a prospect I thought was going to be really, really good. And his fastball was just too straight. He threw hard, but it was too straight. And even if you have pretty good command, major league hitters can hit 95 like it's nothing. So maybe he needs to try a two-seamer, or he throws a cutter, but he barely throws it. We need to throw that a lot more than the four-seamer. I just think the current pitch mix is not going to work. Certainly not to have him as a starter.
Talking with Keith Law from The Athletic about the Texas Rangers and Major League Baseball and different things going on with the farm system. Keith, one thing, we mentioned Jack Leiter there. One thing that we've been really frustrated with here in Texas over the last decade plus,
40 years.
Really going back to really going back to
since Kevin Brown,
since Derek Holland, probably, is the seeming inability of this organization to draft, develop, and get to the majors good starting pitchers. They've had trouble with Jack Leiter, obviously, who we just mentioned, Cole Winn, Owen White, just various guys. Cole Reagan struggled here a great deal, obviously had the Tommy John issues, but struggled here a great deal, goes to Kansas City, and it clicks all of a sudden, and he's dominant in Kansas City. Is there anything that you see or anything you hear around the league about the way the Rangers handle arms, handle pitching, that makes you say, hey, they should be doing things a little bit differently, because their process for the last decade hasn't worked out very well?
Well, they did have that stretch where they brought in, I believe, some outside coaches and they were trying to change a lot of deliveries. Remember, they had that run of prospects who, I think 4 of their top 5 pitching prospects all blew out in the same year. And that happens. That's going to set you back a long way. Reagan's, I think, was one of those. Owen White was one of those also. Nobody can lose 4 of their top pitching prospects for a year to 2 years and have that not massively impact the system. And I do think, to a large degree, that drove the decisions to draft Leiter and then Rocker in back-to-back years. Well, we're just going to go take college pitchers who should get there really quickly. I mean, Rocker, before he blew out, looked like he was going to be in the big leagues by the end of that season. And I do think, assuming he comes back 100% from his Tommy John surgery, he's probably going to be in the majors pretty quickly. But I also look at their drafts, and a lot of times they've gone for longer term. I think they've leaned more position players, and they've gone for guys who've taken a longer time to get there. And that is a different developmental challenge than taking, like I said, take the college pitcher who gets there really quickly. And they haven't done that a whole lot. And they did it with Leiter and Rocker. And unfortunately, in both of those cases, it hasn't worked out.
Keith, there was a lot of discussion at the beginning of this year just how many of the game's top aces were unavailable at the start of the year due to arm injuries and other things. And I know that's also been a problem, like you just mentioned it there with the Rangers. That's been a problem with various farm systems. How big is the issue the MLB is facing right now with, injuries to these top arms at the major league and minor league level? And what kind of a fix is there for that?
Yeah, it's not going away because there are many causes. I am one of the advocates of saying, advocate's not a great word for it. Look, we have real evidence that pitchers throwing as hard as they can. So it's not necessarily the number on the radar gun, but it's what you personally are capable of doing. Pitchers throwing at their maximum velocity all the time does increase the risk of UCL damage. And there's nothing in this game that really encourages guys to take a little bit off their fastball. There are some pitchers who just naturally do it, but most of the time it's like, hey, you're on a limited pitch count. You're in here, you're going to be out after 80 pitches, or you're only in here to get 3 outs. So of course you're going to throw as hard as you can. You want to maximize the value of the limited time that you're pitching in the game. And so, I think going to some, people have proposed systems where you have fewer pitching changes, or you're allowed to carry fewer pitchers on the roster so that pitchers do have to pitch a bit more and then pace themselves. That might be the solution. I'm not 100% sure that is one, because I don't think there's an easy answer. Telling pitchers, hey, your livelihood depends on getting guys out. Also, don't throw as hard as you can, even though that's probably a better way to get guys out. There's not a simple solution to that. Most pitchers are going to say, yeah, of course I'm going to throw as hard as I can, because the most important thing in my job is to get the next hitter out.
Keith, are the Astros done? Do we have to stop worrying about them in the West?
It's going to be pretty hard for them to dig their way out of this hole, but I hesitate to say that anyone's done when we're not even at the midpoint of May. They're not looking good, and they're pretty banged up. That's the big thing. Mm-hmm. I think especially the pitching staff is pretty banged up. And if they don't get healthy, we might have this conversation a month from now, and I could say, yeah, you probably don't have to worry about the Astros, at least not for this year.
Hey, man, this was great. Been a big fan of yours for a long time. Appreciate you popping on with us.
Yeah, my pleasure.